And welcome back to the Crochet Crowd, as well as my friends at yarnspirations.com. Getting right into it today is the Tunisian Crochet Lace Shells Scarf. This is using Red Heart Super Saver Ombre with an 8mm size L Tunisian hook or an Afghan hook. So it'll look something like this. So that's all you need. Now I'm using an 8mm as you see, and on camera today I'm just going to be using some demonstration yarn today. It's the Bernat Forever Fleece Finer, and so I'm going to be creating this little sample with you. We can change the size of this, but there's something really important when you are using the Red Heart Super Saver Ombre. It's telling you to reserve your yarn. So let's talk about that before we get started, because if you want to have the fringe, you're going to want to do the reserve yarn first and then move on. Welcome to my channel, and I'm here to inspire you, give you crochet advice, and help you along with your next project. If you enjoyed this pattern, please give me a thumbs up or even comment so I can gauge your interest. It helps me to know what to film next. So let's talk about the reserve. Do you see how this color matches this? And then this color matches? That's called reserving your yarn. So instead of just crocheting this or doing your Tunisian and then you realize that their fringe is not gonna match, they want you to do that first. So what it's stating here is that cut 60 lengths 20 long and set aside for the fringe. So what you want to do is that you want to cut 60 lengths. So you would probably want to do 30 lengths for each side. So from the outside of the ball make your 30 lengths that you want, and then from the inside of the ball make your 30, and what you're going to do is just put it aside, and then when you're at the end of the project you will apply that and it will match the coloring that you have. Just gotta make sure that you put a note on it. And what I do for myself is that if I'm reserving, I will put it on a piece of paper or something and put it aside. Make sure the cat doesn't jump up on it, and then you can work with that later. So your fringing is done first, therefore the remaining of the ball can be used for this entire scarf, and you will notice that it's one ball completely for this scarf. So with the reserving of the yarn in front, you will have virtually little waste at the end. Let's begin this sample. So as we look carefully at this, we have some schematics that you see on how this is done, which is why I'm here today. I'm gonna demonstrate this. We have some photography and how this is done, and this is kind of the work that we have involved. So the entire scarf is here. You see that the reserve yarn matches, as I mentioned, and it's gonna be quite a great day. So I'm going to begin, and they have given us enough information to be able to change the size if you would like to do that. It's in multiples of 3 chains plus 2. So you go 3, 3, 3, and then add 2 chains at the end, and you will have balance. So you can either chain 32 and match the size or customize this. If you love this so much, you might want to make this into a blanket without the fringe and etc., and they've given you the power to do that. Let's begin. It's an 8mm size L crochet hook with the Red Heart Super Saver. I'm using an 8mm size L crochet hook with my Bernat Forever Fleece Finer. Let's begin. So I ran a little swatch of this to make sure that I understand the pattern. So everything is in shells. They're in sets of 3 that you see, and they just line up with each other as you go. So once you get this beginning, it's just the same row over and over and over. And let's begin our beginning chain now. So let's begin, and we're starting with the slip knot. If you like the color that you see, it's called Zing. It's Z-I-N-G, Zing. And what you can do is chain either 32 and match the pattern, or chain in multiples of 3 plus 2, which is what I'm gonna do. So if you're gonna customize even for a blanket, so 1, 2, 3. Are you happy with the width of it? Yes or no? If not, keep on going. So 1, 2, 3, and then 1, 2, 3, and then if you're happy with the width of it, just add 2 more, and then you're done and you're ready to go back across your chain. So whatever you decided to do, we're gonna start row number 1 in the forward pass next. So in Tunisian, when the hook moves forward, it's called a forward pass, and when the hook goes backward, it's a return pass. We're never gonna change the hook direction. We're always gonna go back and forth like an old-fashioned typewriter. So you're going to begin, and you are going to go second chain from the hook, and you're going to get the back horizontal bumps. I just call them back bumps. So 1 and 2, turn it around and get the back bump, and you're going to slide the hook into that back bump and move it down your shaft, yarn over and pull through and move down the shaft. You want to get these loops beyond the throat of the Tunisian hook so that it gets the width of the stitch work itself. You were going to notice is that it's going to be kind of loose with the Red Heart Super Saver Ombre, but Tunisian is generally really tight, and it's the right hook, and you'll see that the tension of that will get better just within a couple rows, and you'll see it coming together. So continuing along down the chain, just going in the back, horizontal bump, pull through and shift. So I just go in, yarn over and push, and keep on doing that all the way down your chain. Once you're at the end of the chain, if you decided to count 32 and do that, you will have 32 loops on your hook. Now that we're all the way across, the return pass is going to establish our pattern going forward, and we're still on row number 1. So usually what we would do is that we would just get ourselves all the way back, and then a pattern would start. In this particular pattern, the pattern is, repeating is going to start immediately. How we're going to do this is that in crochet normally is that you start and you chain a certain amount and then you blast your way across. In Tunisian, the growth of the row is done on the return pass. So to step higher, it's actually done on this side, not here. So it's kind of for some reason for some people it's kind of confusing. So we're going to start with this pattern immediately. So we're going to start by just yarning over and pulling through the first loop. That is going to be as if you're chaining 1 to build higher in a row. You're now going to just chain 1 again, and this is going to create a space. Now you're going to yarn over and pull through 4 loops, which includes this one and these 3. These 3 are going to come together to create the shell work. This is just the starting loop in order to make that happen. So you're gonna yarn over and pull through a total of 4 loops. So we have 1, 2, 3 and 4. Now you're going to do a chain 1. So now to start another section, you're going to chain 1 and then pull through 4 loops. So we pull through once, 1, 2, 3 and 4. So the starting loop is where you started plus those 3. I want you to visualize that this pattern is made up of groups of 3. Then you're going to chain 1 to finish that group, chain 1 to start another group, and then yarning over, pulling through the next 4 loops. And if you bear with me, I can explain more. So in order, before you get to the end, you got to chain 1 and then pull through the final 2. Now what you see here is that you have basically 2 chains that separate these particular shells. So when we're working through this, it's not just one chain that is separating between the 2. Everything's in groups of 3. So if you want to think about it from a perspective in my brain, is that you have a chain before the shell, you have the shell, and then you have a chain after the shell. That equals 3, which is the same number of the shell. So you have a chain 1, the shell, and another chain 1, which equals the 3. And everything is in sets of 3 like that. Now let's begin in row number 2 and picking up the stitch work where we need to. In row number 2, what we have to do is pick up the loops on where they are by using the upper bars or the horizontal bars. So to do this is that you know that you have a chain 1 before you hit the edge here. So you're just gonna go to the horizontal bar and you're going to pick it up. So you're just gonna go in. Remember how we went into a chain? You're gonna go into a horizontal bar, so it's not a vertical like it would be with normal Tunisian, and you're gonna pull through and leave it and push. You're then going to go to the middle part of the shell work. That's the next one. So this is 2 of 3. I want you to visualize everything in sets of 3. Ignore the first one. Now you want to go into a chain. So the upper bar once again. And there is your new shell for the future. So to start the next shell, you're gonna come into the next chain. So there's 1. You're gonna come into where the shell work all comes together. That is 2. And then you're gonna go into the chain after the shell, and that's 3. So this is your next group. Now if you're sticking your hook into the upper bar and you're not sure it's right, if you always stick it into the right, same spot, it'll always be lined up. Okay, so I think here See the distance? It's wrong. So it's important for me to leave stuff like this in the video, not for refilming, but to show you that sometimes you gotta be a little bit critical of your own work in order to do that. So you have these three belong with this shell, these three belong with this shell, and then you still have another shell here. And you're gonna continue to do this all the way down. So you're gonna go into the upper bar, the horizontal bar, you're gonna go into where all the shells came together, that's 2, and then you're gonna go into the upper bar on the other side. So the biggest lesson I learned in Tunisian is that if you're gonna stick your hook somewhere, as long as you're consistent, it's never a mistake. Here's the most important detail that you'll ever leave with today. When you come to an edge, it says to go in the 2 vertical bars. What this means is that you have to turn this forward, and remember how we chained 1 when we started? It creates this, the 2. And you want to yarn over and go through those 2. And what this is going to do, instead of having a gaping hole at the end, it's going to close it off, and so it'll be very consistent looking. So now we're ready for the return pass. So do you remember how to do the return? It's gonna yarn over and pull through the first loop as your chain 1 to build. Remember that we have to create a space before we do the shell work, so we're going to chain 1 to create that space, and then we're going to yarn over and pull through 4 loops, which will create the next set of shells here. So you're just gonna pull through once, twice, 3, and 4. And that just built a shell on top of the other shell. You're going to yarn over and pull through, that's chain 1, and you're gonna yarn over, pull through that, and chain 1 again. So there's 2 chains that separate these shells. You're gonna yarn over and pull through 4 loops, and this is going to create the next shell that's in line. And now how many chains do you need to create to jump to the next one? 1 and 2, that's right. So then how many loops do we gotta pull through to form the next shell? Did you say 4? That's the right answer if you did. Now before you come to the edge, what do you need to do? You need to chain 1 to create that space, and then pull through the final 2. And you see that the shells just lined up on top of each other. I'll show you one more pass there and back, and then we're gonna be good to go. So let's begin another forward pass. You're going to come into the horizontal bar to pick up. You're going to come into where the shells gather. This is number 2. And then you're going to come into the horizontal bar after the shells. And that was your 3. So this is the new setting of 3 for your future. To start the next set of 3, you have to come into the horizontal bar before the shells. You go into where the shells gather, that's number 2, and then the horizontal bar after the shells, and there is another group of 3 for the future. Okay, so horizontal bar where the shells meet, and horizontal bar. Once you have this done, you can see that they're in sets of 3, so 3, 3, and 3, because I only have 3 sets of shells. So on the edge, do you remember what you have to do? You have to kind of turn it and put on so that there's 2 verticals, which is the chain 1, yarning over, pulling it through. And now let's do the return. Do you remember? So yarn over, pull through 1 loop, and that's because you're chaining 1 to grow the height, and now you need to create a space. So chain 1 to create that space, and then chain the yarn over and pull through 4 loops. And then how many chains are you gonna do before you do the next shell? 1 and 2, and then pull through 4 loops. So 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then chain 2, and then go into your next shells. And remember to chain 1 before finishing and pulling through the final 2. This is all this pattern is, and you're gonna work your way across. What I'm going to show you now is that I'm going to show you how to do the finishing row so that you can finish this to do what is called as a bind off. So what you can do for your bind off to finish off is you're going to go across, but what we have to do is bind off in a way that it actually closes everything down. And what we're going to do is basically slip stitch our way across. So normally what we would have done is that we would have went into the horizontal bar to start. So we're still gonna go in the horizontal bar. You're gonna yarn over and you're gonna pull through the first loop and push. That closes down that stitch. You're gonna come into the bottom where the shells meet, yarn over and pull through. You're gonna come to the horizontal that's right after that shell, so that grouping of 3 is now done, and you can move your way down. So you see that instead of just gathering the loops and leaving them on the hook, what we're doing is that we're picking those stitches up and we're finishing it with the bind off, with basically doing a slip stitch concept across. In Tunisian, the way that you finish stuff off matches usually the stitch that you're working with, so there's no two ways of doing things. So for example, if we were doing the knit stitch, you'd want to bind off in the knit stitch format in order to keep the consistency of the work. And don't forget that when you get to the end, you'll go through the 2 final and pull through and through. And that's all there is to it. So at this point you can just fasten off. You can weave in your yarn. What you can do then is now add your fringe if you would like to do that, and we have videos on adding fringe. It's not that hard and it's just evenly spaced along the edge. You will notice that there's instructions on the pattern for that if you wish, and this is a really neat little project. I think that you can blast this through. Even a baby size blanket of this would be awesome. I don't know how many chains that you would start with for a baby size, but what I would recommend is that if you were going to chain in the multiples of 3 plus 2, you can just do your chain to the width of an average baby blanket that you know about. You can find that information online if you don't have examples of that, and then just chain in the multiples and then just begin your baby blanket. If you are doing a baby blanket size, you're going to need the Tunisian hooks with the cord on it to have more stitches on there, but overall I think it's a great little pattern, and it's a way to kind of add more character to your Tunisian stitching sample work that you're wanting to do. It's a way to build your skills, and that's why we're here today. So hopefully you have a good one, and we'll see you again another time. Bye bye.